We're on Zoom. Hi, everybody.
Here we go. Hello.
Hello.
I've been are you a Seinfeld fan, John? Did you ever watch Seinfeld?
Oh, let me just manage my sound. I have two sound sources, not at the same time. Seinfeld, you mentioned? No, I didn't listen to that. I heard about that a lot, but never saw it.
I was a big fan of the day, but I started watching them again, and it is a funny show. And
did they restart doing this show?
No, I
heard about this show recently.
It's just on Netflix, and so I've been watching it, and
yeah,
it was a very funny show. But, so actually, so let's go ahead and get going, because you mentioned, unless people join, you had something to share regarding scaling and centering, I think is what you said.
Yeah. So let's share this. Is it here? Yeah.
I wish Dylan had joined.
Yeah.
I'd love to have shown the disparity between when I would do something, I change my DPI and it looks okay, and then he would do it on his high DPI machine, and it doesn't render the full GUI. It was really weird.
Yeah. I had issue with this developing quick access pop-up users having high DPI screen, but the issue was not necessarily caused by the IDPI itself, but by the scaling that these users are setting, because their screen is so small. The DPI is so small that they have to enlarge their screen to make it more visible. And in an AUTOHOTKEY GUI, if you are using some commands to get the center of the GUI, for example, to put a button at the middle exactly, so you will need to know the width of the GUI, and the way you get the width of the GUI is not taking into account the scaling. So your button will be off by a given percentage of the center, because this value is not taking into account. So it took me some time to find that. Maybe it was already somewhere on the AUTOHOTKEY forum, but I didn't find it when I was doing some research on that. But playing with Dylan, we finally found it's a one line that you have to add, in fact, just to make sure that the centering will be correct. So what I can do is share the script where I have an example of this. Share screen 2. So this actually my screen is there's no scaling. It's 100% scaling. So if I run this script, it will show that the screen DPI is 96, which is the normal scaling of a screen. So the scaling is 100%. And some other information that we don't need for now. So you see I have an image and 3 buttons, and the 3 buttons are centered because when I create the buttons here in the script, I gave a variable name to these buttons, and I'm using these variable names here in a function that is called GUI center buttons. And this function receive some parameters, or for example, how much spacing you want between your buttons, what margin you want, the size of the margin. But so I keep the default values here, and here I have some calculation that will calculate the number of buttons, the spacing you wish to have, the available space. It will also calculate what is the largest button among the buttons that are received. Buttons are received here in a variable, which is a variadic variable where you can receive multiple values. So that's how I can send here one or more button IDs to this function. So it will find what is the largest button, because it's nicer when buttons are the same width and not depending on the length of the text inside the button, or the label inside the button. So it does all that, and then it will calculate the center and return and move here using the command move each of these controls that we receive in this R controls array, and set the X and the X value and the width and the height of each of the buttons received. So I'll just run this again. I'll just remove the message box that we don't need now. So you see that even if this text is short, the button is the same size as this one that is very long. And all this is well centered. So this works very well as long as you keep your scaling at 100%. So let's see now what will happen if we change the scaling. And I'll show you, it is in French, that's my French Windows, but you will find the same setting in English under ease of use, the section here, which in French is option d'ergonomie. And under that, the first screen you get is scaling. That's here. So recommended is 100% in the type of screen I have. So it depends on the type of screen. So if you have a high DPI screen, it may recommend it to be 150, for example. But I can still change it to 150, even if it's not recommended. So you should see if Zoom is doing a good job. You should see everything getting larger from now on. So is this what you see?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'll move this on my secondary monitor. And now I will run the same script. And you see that the buttons are not centered, they are off, because they are centered using a value that is not adjusted to the scaling. Okay, so what you have to do to fix this, it took me so much time to find that the final solution was only 2 lines, is here in the function to get the width of the window. You know that you can get the width of a window when you resize a window. There's a command that is called GUI size that runs every time you move you change the size of the window. And inside this command here, we can use GUI width or GUI height. So we have here the value width available inside this command. But when we are not inside this command, when the GUI is not resized, the way to get the width of the window is to get the position, is to use the command win-get-pos and giving it an identification of your GUI here. And in the third parameter, it will return the width of the window. So the only thing you have to do is to adjust this value here, because this value is not adjusted, is not scaled, okay? So to do it, I do it in 2 lines. It could be done, of course, on just 1 line, but first I'll calculate what is the scaling. So the scaling is a constant in AUTOHOTKEY that gives you what is the DPI of your screen. So it's A_screen DPI. And when it is 100% scaling, it will be 96. So to know what is the scaling, you divide this value by 96, and it will give you 1.5. For example, if you select 150%, the value here of the scaling will be 1.5. And what you have to do here is to divide the width that you get by this scaling. So for example, if I have 1000 divided by 1.5, it will give 667. And it will make the buttons being now well centered, as we can see here. Now the buttons are well centered, even if there's scaling that changes the reference value that gives the width of this GUI. So that's the trick. It's not very complex once you found it.
Very cool.
So I'll return to my normal scaling. Of course, it will work the same if I use 125.
I was going to say,
yeah, it will just change. Instead of being 1.5, it will be 1 0.25 and still give the same,
Mhm.
the good centering here. So I stop my sharing. Did we have some visitors or questions? Hellbent is there. Hi, Hellbent.
Yeah, you know, but
Stop
Morning,
sharing. Where
fellas.
is my Zoom control? Here it is. Yeah.
that's awesome, man. That's I'm gonna have to look at my screen clipping tool, because when the DPI is set
there's an
off,
issue. Yeah. We can just take a look at the issue, not necessarily look for the solution now, but let's here. I'm still at 125, and if I use your scaling, your clipping tool, it will just it doesn't take the exact content. Yeah, so maybe it's just to make some division by the scaling that will return the right content.
Do you have scaling turned on?
Yeah, 125 at this time. If I return,
no, I mean for the GUI itself, like when you draw the window, is scaling turned on for that, or is it turned off?
There's a value here. I haven't played with that. It's plus something.
It's minus to turn it off. Minus,
okay.
Right. So Joe, so yours, it doesn't, your tool doesn't turn off scaling?
It does on the coordinates, you know, so when he draws a box, it's, you know, it's the right size.
Oh,
however,
but when you show the second thing, okay, so it's just turning off the DPI scaling should fix that. So it'll be the same size. It won't scale it.
Yeah, and I'm just looking for the exact
there's an example
of this option.
I do somewhere use the dash DPI
scale, minus DPI scale.
Yeah, that's in there once, but I believe it's only on the drawing of it, not on the, and that's where I just don't, you know, that's where Hellbent, I know you work with the GDI library a lot. Maybe you can very quickly
the
fix
scaling, the whole scaling thing is still something that's elusive to me because I don't have a environment to test it. So, but I do know a few things. I know more than I actually do, but yeah, I'm not able to run it. So, but for like the problem with the turning off the DPI scaling is that it'll work for like shapes and things like that, but it won't work for text. So if you have a button that works perfectly with DPI scaling turned on, if you were to turn off DPI scaling, it will suddenly be the text on it will be too large.
So what we see here, I have 150 scaling, and I turned off the adjustment that I was showing earlier. I don't know if you were there when we talked about the adjustment for scaling.
Like a minute before.
Okay, because to achieve a good centering, if you do not use this option minus scaling here, the way to do that in your calculation of the center is to adjust the width here by dividing by the scaling factor. Okay, so it was working correctly, but when we use the option, the DPI, the minus DPI scale option here instead, the issue is that the buttons are much larger and they go over the edge of the window. So I'll just return to the previous solution, which is to not use this option, but here use this calculation to adjust the width to the scaling. Oops. So, it's like this again. Okay, now it's okay. So I could not tell exactly what makes the buttons larger when you remove the scaling, but here buttons are they have the correct width. They are adjusted to have all the same width, the width of the largest one. So yeah, that's good to know this option, but it's not necessarily a perfect solution.
Well, Jean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the dash DPI scale that you added, when you did that, it went off the screen. And that to me means AUTOHOTKEY at that point in time isn't getting the correct width of the GUI, you know, and so there'd be something else we'd have to do in addition to that, right? To get it to.
Not sure if it is about, here it is. Not sure if it is the width, but the size of the buttons that seems to be different. So I'll just return to this other.
This is something when you use those commands there, like when get position or control get position.
Yeah.
It returns the non-scaled size. So if you have any scaling, you have to apply that to the output. So if it says 100 and you have 150%, you need to add that extra 50.
Okay. So if I do, I'll use at the same time the two things, the DPI here and the calculation of the width here to see what will be the result. So the result is not very good. So it seems that there are two approach to find a solution to that, and the one that works with the way I calculate the centering of the buttons is not to use this option here.
Yeah, and we're not saying one's, you know, the right and wrong way. It's just that I think with a little bit of work, we could get the other one to work as well.
Yeah,
but yeah.
But you would have to understand what's the exact effect of minus DPI scale.
The other thing I want to add real quickly here is because both you guys were, in Hellbent especially, but I know John with the QAP, you did a crazy amount of working with GUIs. And the fact that both of you guys working on this topic, because I look at it and go, oh, what a headache, right? But it's really great to see that even people who work with them a lot, also, it's not, oh, it's simple. You know, like I get on stuff with Maestriath and he always makes me feel dumb just because he's, oh yeah, it's the blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, you know, but it is complex stuff that we're working with.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that you have to write a little bit, test it, write a little bit, test it, and see what's going on, and just start to memorize it over time, and you just get used to that. Yeah,
which is the other point of, I always try to tell people, this is why I don't get embarrassed. I don't feel quote unquote stupid, is because I know, like Maestriath has spent a crazy amount of time doing this, you know, and he's just memorized it and has got it to where it's second nature to him. And everyone starts somewhere. You know, he didn't start where he is now. I am envious of people who've actually gone to college or you know, to learn to be a programmer. But yeah, it's all about, you know, spending time in it and digging with it. What you been up to, Hellbent? You've been doing anything?
Nothing much. Just doing a little. Right now, I'm working on a gesture kind of script. It's a weird little thing. It's you kind of make a word out of using gestures, and then that launches. That's like a passcode to do a certain action.
Cool. Is it anything you can share, or?
Yeah, it's still early enough in the project that I can probably share without any issues. Let's see. All right, so right now I'm just working on the graphics for the next step. So I need a UI for it after. So I'm just coming up with a design. I don't really know what I need for it, but this is my basic design. So I'll show you the gesture thing, and then it come back and this will make a little bit more sense. So if I run this, I can start making little simple gestures. And this gives me a character, and I can go through and create new gestures. So let me see if I can find one that doesn't exist yet. Maybe this. Okay, that doesn't exist, so I'll say that that equals Z. So now if I do that again, that's going to be Z. The idea with that is those characters form up a sentence, and then these can be used to, let's say, call up an object. So this is like a little example of it. So let's say if I have an object with that password, then I can perform whatever I want. So in this case, it's just gonna, I have the address to something I want to run. So that's probably gonna close this. So, Actually, you know what I can do so that way I don't have to worry about that is I can get something else. Maybe I'll have it. So here it's only going to use one character, but the idea would be to have a sentence. Okay, there we go. So now if I do Z, it now gives me a tooltip that says press Control to cancel or press Shift to launch whatever that was. So I hold Shift and there we go. But like I said, this is just for this example, it's this isn't actually what it would be doing. It wouldn't actually be running something. It would be doing something else. But I'm just developing out the system. Now this will be something that sits up at the top corner of my screen, and it'll maybe have a. The idea I'm working with right now is that I can click on this and have it locked, so that way it always stays out. In other words, as I type into it, it'll flash up, but then after a few seconds, it'll start to fade away. If it creates a full sentence, it'll give me a preview of what that sentence is. I can go in and edit what the sentence is. In here, I'll probably add in some buttons that'll say to be able to add new gestures, etc. Maybe one of these buttons will give me a legend of my buttons, of my gestures. And the gestures basically work like this. So I can just program a bunch of different gestures and then have them be an alphabet. Questions?
Well, I'm very curious, and let's just stick with well, I guess it was Z or A in this picture. I'm not sure. Is the
so if I do this, that's an A. So if
okay.
You can see.
So how sensitive, if you started to curve that line, how far out of bounds?
This is the very first algorithm I've written for this, so it's not a very good one, but it works. It works fairly well. But let's say, look at this. Okay, so let's do O. Or I don't have a good M, I guess. But let's say A. W, I know I can get probably every time. So it's pretty accurate, but there's probably a few that would cause conflict. And the idea with like I said, with the other one where I did, I don't remember what the Z. Do you remember what this? Oh yeah, the Z was this. So this right now, like I need a confirm. So I have it's waiting. So if I press Control, it cancels it. From running the action, right? So I'll have some kind of extra step if it gets to the full sentence. So I can press Shift or I can.
And is your thought that people would use this like all the time, or this
is actually for a specific person for a very specific task. So the idea is that they'll have a code. So let's say A, F, G, D, and that means something. So it'll do something based on that, and they'll have.
Yeah. No, I'm asking more about the environment they're going to be in. Are they like? Are they using a mouse, a trackball? Is there anything? I mean, do you
mouse? They want to eventually do like some kind of three-dimensional mouse. But it's just basically just the mouse to launch the different thing. The reason is because the options are quite substantial, so you can't just display all the options, right? So the code is one method of getting to that.
Cool.
But it's still early development.
And the way you get the gesture is to have to use set timer to at every X millisecond, you get the position of the mouse and you calculate based on that?
Yes.
You capture and then can calculate?
So right now, when it starts, so if I press I have a hotkey to launch it, number pad 1. If I do that, it just sits in a loop until I start moving. So now if I start moving, it'll start capturing my position. So it does this first to get my starting position, and then it goes into here and it does this as fast as it can. So as fast as it can. And it just goes through, gets the position, and it checks to see if the last position that it was, like the last direction it was moving in, has changed. So this is where my algorithm is a little bit wonky, because I had a different idea of how I want it to like mark where it begins, where it ends, and everything like that. So this kind of sort of just organically, this is the first copy of it. So this is
where you draw a dot at every time it is the position is captured.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, and then it uses those dots, so it adds to a variable called sequence, and it just appends to it. So if it's got enough of it, if it breaks a certain threshold on the left or right, it'll add an L. It'll put an L at the end of the sentence, and then it'll just keep adding up until it stops, up until it loops where my cursor stops moving.
Yeah.
So if my
and
cursor
then you
stops,
analyze the sequence to see what's the end, the start, and the changing direction points.
Yes. So it gives me a string, and if I go up here, these would be the strings that it gives me. So if I put a tooltip, in here, display, let's say, the X direction. It's currently left.
Going left, yeah.
Now it's right. Now it's neutral.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have the same for up and down.
Yes, for left and for the X and the Y axis. And then this is the weird thing about my algorithm, is it uses like this frequency where I create this object. Where's the object? Right here, where it's got a left key, a right key, and a neutral key for the X frequency. And each time when it does an evaluation of whether the position is left of the last position or right of the last position, it just adds to it. And then at the end, it says, okay, how many, my idea was that I was going to use the neutral as a way of saying, okay, it's not on an angle. If it's not, doesn't have a lot of neutral in it, then it's on an angle left or right. But I didn't end up following through with that, but it still ended up working that just by looking at that frequency of it being over 30%. So I've done some adjustments, but I originally had this at about 30%, and I didn't have in looking at, so this is looking at two different values. It's supposed to look at, it looks at two different values. It looks at the right and the left. Yeah. So this one would be the last direction, which would presumably be the direction it's actually moving in. So if I start here and I'm moving in this direction, the last direction I moved in is the direction that I was going to begin with. The other one, so now it's checking to see if it's changed. So I'd be moving in a different direction, and it looks at the frequency of that. So this is just to get my points.
Is there a minimum distance you have to be moving?
Hold on, I must. No, but that's where this algorithm isn't that good, because it needs especially for the straight lines, it needs a little bit of distance. In other words, the values going left and right. When I first imagined it, I wasn't anticipating how much your mouse actually goes left and right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you need a good tolerance to not the exact direction that you expect.
So with certain things, with the straight lines, it needs a little bit more distance with the current algorithm in order for it to not think it's a left or a right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know on the forum, I remember, and someone even said I should check it out. I did, but to me, I don't I don't believe I have this need. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying for me, I don't think I need it. But if you search the forum, I think there is some stuff on gestures, using mouse gestures for patterns, but it's cool you're developing your own, of course.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Actually, this was based on the original one was, the idea was like to have a pad that you could create your gestures in. So let me see. Something like this to draw on. But I was like, I don't know, this seems kind of clunky. And so that's why we're into the other gestures. So this would be the same basic idea. You just create a password or a code, and then that's used to create an action.
It looks like Lexicos actually wrote one.
I'll have to check those out.
If
I can get it like this one, I think my algorithm's okay. Like it seems pretty reliable, but like I can definitely see some faults in it.
And the other, like I said, I'm not knocking what you're doing, right?
No. I'm knocking it.
Yeah, but the other great thing about this, though, which is what I think Sean and I talked a little bit about with the classes demo he did last week? Anyway, is you need a use case. We often learn something. We learn a lot of great new things when we pick something to dive deep into, right? And so even if you don't end up using the gesture saying yourself, the stuff that you're coming up with, you might leverage in a lot of different ways later on, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's been like that for like the last year. Lots of discovery.
Yeah,
lots of discovery. Yeah. But other than that, I haven't really been working on much. I still have our other project in the back burner. I haven't done any. I don't think I've done anything since the last time I showed that.
Yeah, no worries.
Let me see. Yeah, I don't think I've done ice.
This is something we're going to add to the window snipping tool to be able to type stuff, to be able to draw a lot, some figures.
Yeah, I think we showed that. I think he's seen that before, right?
Well, I'm just saying anyone that's watching this later
okay.
as well.
Okay.
But yeah, it's and there's no hurry. I mean, it's just when we, when you're got the time.
Yeah, I think, where was I? I'm not even sure where I was. Okay, so number pad 1. And okay, so yeah, so I haven't done anything on it since the last thing. I was just working on still getting the prototype done. What I need to do is, if I still have an example of it up. How the heck do you get it? I have this damn bar in my way. Do you know how to get this bar to stop being down? You can't see it, but the bar that drops down, do you know how to get rid of it, make it not be down?
I don't know, because I don't know.
Okay, there we go. There, because it was blocking the play button or for whatever reason. Oh, never mind. Okay, yeah. So what I need to do is, when I get the next time I get a chance, I need to create a class for a drop down. So I'll just write a class and then just use it to create whatever. Whenever I need one of these drop downs, I'll just use that class, and then things like that. So I need to do the controls, like maybe a button set, these class with these guys, so that way I can just come in and basically just slap a window there and just add in the controls. Whatever control the particular thing needs, I can just add them in.
Cool.
But I think that's it. I'll stop.
By the way, oh, go ahead, John.
I could show you the progress with my clipboard editor tool.
Oh, cool.
share.
Yeah,
So
this one, when you showed me before, and I'm like, it's pretty niche, right? As far as
yeah, it's something for me. But
for some people, it's that's how some of the best tools are made, right?
Yeah, but quick access pop-up started as named the folders pop-up for me because I like this script that I found on the forum and just start to add things to it. And as doing it, why not share it with others? And then it draws some attention and good suggestion to make it evolve to what it became. So I don't know what will happen with the clipboard editor, but in fact, and there's a lot of clipboard editors, clipboard history, clipboard rules. But I'm using a clipboard history, which is Ditto, and there's a lot, and now it's part of Windows 10, and it works well. So I don't want to redo it, but what I want is a way to easily edit the content of the clipboard in order to reuse it multiple times after without having to paste the clipboard somewhere in an editor, change it and recopy it. So that's the first thing I wanted to do just for myself. And also to have some rules to, for example, convert the clipboard to lowercase, uppercase, and things like that. There are tools that are doing it, but the number of clicks they require to do it, I don't find it very user-friendly. So I started to do my own. And so let me just start this application here, this script. So I have I have a hotkey, which is control middle mouse button, and it will pull up a window that will show what is the current content of the clipboard. If this is text, and here I just recently copy it with this typo here. So what I can do now is I can edit the content of the clipboard and save it and now reuse the clipboard elsewhere. So for example, I will copy it here. So it will copy there's always on top here. So even if I click somewhere else, it will stay visible. So as soon as I copy something, it will be reflected in the clipboard. And there's a status bar here indicating that the clipboard, this editor, this edit control here is currently connected to the clipboard. So if I change the content of the clipboard, copy, it will be reflected here. But as soon as I start editing the content of the clipboard, for example, I will just remove this. As soon as I change the content, the clipboard now is not connected anymore. So I could copy something somewhere else, and it will not be reflected here, and I would be able to use the content that I copied somewhere else, so I can play with the content here. And when I'm ready, let's say that I will just keep this line here, I will save the clipboard. So now the clipboard is connected again, and the content of the clipboard will be what I have here. So that's the first thing I wanted to have a way to, because often I receive, for example, MP3 files that I import them in iTunes, and then I have to rename the titles. Often the titles are not correct and I have to change them. Then I need rules to do things, for example, to remove the underscore that you have instead of spaces in some text. So I don't have an example at end here, but I'll just create one quickly here. So 1, 2, 3. So that's a piece of text that can be longer than that. So what I can do now is with the rules here is, and so this is connected. So if I apply the rule, for example, lowercase, which will not be very visible here with the content. So I'll change it to uppercase and underscore to space. So these are some hard-coded rules that I built, and I apply these rules. And now when I copy this here, it will be uppercase and it will be without the underscore. There's a typo here that are replaced by space. So for now, these rules are hard-coded, but in a future version, it will be something that user will be able to add, to configure. And there will be rules, for example, search and replace, append at the beginning, or I don't know what is happen at the beginning, happen at the end or happen at the beginning. You know what I mean? Replace this with that, change end of line to make a paragraph, things like that. And what a user will also be able to do is to create rules using AUTOHOTKEY code. So you will be able to use search and str replace or regex replace to build your own more complex rule that will be available, and then it will not be checked boxes. It will be a list of rules that you will be able to enable or disable, one or many if you wish. So for example, so here we have the clipboard visible. But let's say that I will just close the clipboard here, and remember that I have these two rules still in effect here. So if I copy this and paste immediately, whoops, it didn't work. Why? Maybe the rules were, oh yeah, there's a timeout to the rules. If you do not use the rules after 60 seconds, in my case, it is disabled, because often you need a rule now and you do something else, and then you use the clipboard for something else, and you don't want the rule to be applied anymore. So now there is one global timeout, which is in my case 60 seconds. When we will have specific rules or user-defined rules, you will be able to define a timeout different for each rule, and even no timeout at all if you want a rule to be permanent. But so here I'll have to reapply the rule. So let's say this is closed, the rules is now enabled. So if I copy this and paste it now, oops, I did it twice. So it will immediately convert the content that you just copied that you can paste. Of course, you could do it using copy somewhere and paste somewhere else, but it can also be used just to change something in place.
Hey, Jean.
Use it. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Dale was asking if you could make your screen bigger, which is ironic. I said, I
can for this one. Yeah.
The other one, you'd have to use the DPI, right?
Yeah, I would have to change the DPI, which I can do. Yeah, okay. I can do it.
Yeah, and I recently did a simple thing where I'm monitoring the clipboard for certain words, and I have it kind of do some of the basics that you're saying, and it is helpful. It's just mine's always monitoring. It says, hey, is that text? If it is, okay, let's look for certain things and replace them with something else. That's much better thing.
So at this time, it is an alpha version just for me. I shared one version, the first one with you, Joe, just to check if it was working as expected, at least. It's using the same packaging that quick access pop-up. So there's a lot of code that I can reuse. For example, to center the buttons here, I'm using the function that we've seen at the beginning of this call. And using it, I say, oh, it would be good to have always on top, because if this always on top function is not available, as soon as I click somewhere else, I lose the window. So if I want to have it, yep, where is it?
Can you bring it back up? The one thing, and this is just
I'll just restart it.
My preference, which
I had two windows at two instances at the same time, so I'll just restart it. Yes. Here it is. So I'll re-enable. The always on top is enabled by default here. So even if I click somewhere else, and use tab is something else. If I use tab here, it will go to the next control. But if I want to insert tab inside this, of course, I could use control tab, but non-AUTOHOTKEY user would not know it maybe, or some user would not know it. So you can click this and then tab will be available inside the window, and you can change the font, you can change the size of the font.
I hate to ask this, but what was the control tab? What was that?
Inside an edit, you can use control tab. Whoops, where is it? Here, to do tabs inside a control.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's you learned something today.
Yeah, but that's that's an AUTOHOTKEY thing, or that's in any sort of.
No, I think it's a Windows thing.
Okay,
it's not a AUTOHOTKEY.
That's what threw me.
Yeah. And I was confused saying it was.
That is a nice tech, though.
Yeah, because normally a tab will take you to the next control. Yeah. Right. So we see here that we have some adjustment because of the scaling that would be required. So we are losing the top of this checkbox here. Yeah.
The one thing, and this is just the way I would be doing it, because my guess is more often than not, the content here is quote unquote connected, right? So I wouldn't want to have to go down there and read, is it connected or not connected? What I would do is just don't display anything if it is connected, but when it's not connected, throw that not connected up there. I do like that. I would just, that way, whenever I see text down there, I know it's not connected.
I just missed what your point. Excuse me, Joe.
That's all right.
Yeah.
So on average, it's probably, you're probably connected, right? Meaning it represents, what is there represents the clipboard.
As soon as you, so I will cancel here and it will revert to the current content of the clipboard and be connected. So if I,
but my point is right now, I would have to read that to say, oh, is it connected or not connected? Oh, it's connected. Yeah. What I'm saying is I would just not display anything if it's not connected. And then when it's not connected, then throw up your text saying not connected. Because I do think that's very helpful. But, why make people read?
Yeah, but would you not display the content here?
No. Your status bar of it saying connected. I'm just saying leave that blank when it's connected.
Okay. That's okay. Simple way to say that. Okay.
Well, yeah. Sorry. So this way, I don't even have to read it because the second I see something there, I know it's not connected. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the way I would do it because I
like these IDs. I like this idea. Empty if connected.
Yeah, if connected, right? Because that's probably the norm, right?
Yeah. Until you change.
Right.
Until you change the content here. And the first thing I found when it was at first, I was always connected, and in the first release, and using it myself, I found that as soon as I copied something here because I wanted to move it somewhere else, it was just replacing the whole content because it was connected, so it was synced live. So it was preventing me from editing the clipboard that I wanted to edit. So then I came to this notion: okay, we need sometime to be connected, something not to be connected.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
So for now, it's more not a debugging tool because it's a status bar that will be helpful for user. But I understand your point that for me it's good to just be, and the letter here is just to tell me at what point in my code the value was changed, because the clipboard can be connected or deconnected at various places in my script. So I know now that it is at the
neat.
at the line. If I search for E, I'll just move this here. So I'll search for quotes E. So that's this line that changed the value here, but there are other lines that set the status bar values to connected or not connected. So it's also for now debugging tools. And here is the length. The other thing that is useful, because often you have 50 characters for where you want to put your content, and your content is too long. So and you cannot paste it completely in your form, for example, because the remaining after 50 will not be pasted. So you need to edit it somewhere else. So without having that, what you have to do is you open Notepad or an editor, change it, guess what is the current length. Or maybe your editor will help you with that. And then when you're finished, you recopy it and then you paste it. But with this tool, you will be able just to open, click to open the thing, edit it, and then reduce it to the number of characters you need, save clipboard, and paste it directly after that into your form. It saves a few clicks and a few windows switching to do it that way. As you say, it's quite niche. I'm not sure,
but
that how many users will find it make them save time, because to save time with this, you need to do certain type of task frequently.
But even let's say we forget all about the tool you're working on. The general concept you just mentioned, I know from working at corporate America, it came up a lot of I only had X number of characters, right? So what you could do is have write a tool to just monitor your clipboard and look at how, if it's text, count how many are there. And anytime it's over a certain amount of characters, when you're doing something, have it warn you right now. And obviously you can build it in with your tool here. I'm just saying concept wise, it's, you may not think you have this need, but often we do, right? And just don't realize it.
Yeah. All this is based on a command that is on clipboard change. I will just close this here. Yes. So it's a command that you can activate various functions. So here you say when the clipboard changes, execute clipboard content changed. Mm-hmm. There are other occurrences of this tool that I'm using here. It's always the same for now. So here, execute lowercase. So execute or not. So this value here is 0 or 1. So it is 1 if the checkbox is enabled. So if the checkbox is enabled, it will activate lowercase. If it's not activated, it will turn off this command here, and lowercase is somewhere else. Lowercase will do the change of the content. Mm-hmm. The other thing that is tricky is that I wanted to be able to have rules that would be AUTOHOTKEY script. And in order to have AUTOHOTKEY code to be inserted into a script is something that I don't know if there are other techniques, but the one I found is that I'm creating a text file. Let me find, where is it? Is it running from here? Yeah.
Did you say you're trying to write to your script itself?
I want user to type some code in my application. For example, string replace something with something, and do a few lines of code and have these lines being executed when the rules is enabled.
Okay.
Okay. So the way I found is that maybe there are other solutions, but the way I found is to create a script that is a kind of, my main script is, is QAC, no, it's quick access clipboard. Where is it? I'll just sort by most recently. So this is the main script, but there is a secondary script that is created and launched to enable or disable the rules. This script is named QAC rules here, and it is executed if the user do not have AUTOHOTKEY installed on this machine. This would not work, but I'm adding where is it? It's here. The runtime here, QAC rules, which is the runtime of AUTOHOTKEY. And I knew that a long time ago, but I just rediscovered that if you have, and I think it was in one of our calls, Joe, last week, that if you have the executable of the runtime of AUTOHOTKEY being named the same name as a script, when you launch this, it will launch the script. Or maybe the opposite. If you launch a script named QAC rules, it will use the runtime having the same name with the extension exe. And this script here can then be, I will just open it somewhere else here and change it. So this script is can be built, assembled by the main program, saved to a text file with the AHK extension, and then be launched with the content I want. So for now, the content is things that I'm writing myself, which are hard-coded. Mm-hmm. But here I could have content that could be entered by the user in a dialog box where he defined a rule and being executed in this instance. I'm not sure if I'm very clear on that, because it's not yet.
I'm not entirely clear on like what the purpose of the second script is. Like, okay, so
yeah. So if you have a script and you cannot get an input from the user and to modify this script.
No, but you can use logic to tell it, like if there's only a certain amount of things that it can do, you can use logic to direct it to do those things.
Yeah, but if you want to do anything that is AUTOHOTKEY scripting,
right?
Having a loop, having something that to process your text in different ways that I cannot imagine, but you do what you need. You create your own little snippet of AUTOHOTKEY script.
Okay.
And then you want to inject it inside my application. I cannot inject your script inside my script.
Yeah, gotcha.
But I can inject your script inside a separate script that I can launch.
I got you.
Okay. And so to launch it, I'm using QAC rules.AHK and QAC rules.exe to have this running. And I inject some things like that, like the timeout is something that is, where is it? Is it here? No, the timeout, where is it? I don't remember where the timeout is managed, but there's something that will just stop this after some time. Yeah. And now I'm thinking, if rules get disabled, this script could send a message to the main application to change the checkbox that says that this rule is enabled. So there could be communication between the two scripts. And I've done that with Quick Access Pop-up with a secondary application, which is QAP Messenger, that is allowing, for example, to when you right-click on a file in your file manager, you will have a context menu that will add this file to your Quick Access Pop-up menu. This is done by QAP Messenger that will send a message to the main Quick Access Pop-up script.
And you led a webinar on the basic concept, right?
Oh, I don't remember. Yes, we did.
Yeah, you showed us how to connect.
Yeah.
To run a script.
So that's what I'm working on. So it will get interesting, I think, when a user will be able to create their own rules. But for now, it's only hard-coded rules that are available.
And John, I'm just curious if you looked at like Geek Dude's Code Quick Tester, I think it's called, or Isaiah's RaptorX's AUTOHOTKEY toolkit, because both of those, and they may just be saving a file and then running it, but they allow you to, while you're programming, without creating a temp file, to save, to run what you're doing in auto, and I'm just curious how they're doing it. Maybe it's a different or better, I don't know, different type of an approach.
Assuming that the user have AUTOHOTKEY installed?
I assume so. Yeah. So that's part
because that's my point. As if the user does not have AUTOHOTKEY, so I provide the runtime.
Right.
But maybe there could be other solutions.
I was just curious. Yeah.
That's the one that I found that was able to make work.
Very interesting. Yeah. And again, this general concept of, monitoring your clipboard, looking for a change, and then doing something depending on what's in there. It's pretty cool. I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
and
I'll let Quick Access Pop-up users know about this new tool I'm developing at some point and ask them if they want to be beta testers and get comments from them. And if it is like with folders pop-up, it will get new IDs to make this thing evolve and getting better.
Yeah, I was a little thrown at first when I first saw you. I thought it was more of a clipboard manager, not an editor. And I know we talked about it.
And I don't need to do a clipboard history thing because it already exists and works well. And maybe I'll be able to just get the history from Windows and offer in my tool to retrieve the history from Windows. I just know. If anybody knows where Windows is storing the clipboard history, I would appreciate to know where it is because I haven't found that. It's not in the registry. So it's somewhere else so there may be some DLL call that would retrieve that, but I haven't found that yet.
Yeah, and that's just Windows 10 plus, right? Yeah. So that's a new thing, at least the one we're trying to leverage.
Yeah, and I could also retrieve the history from other clipboard history tools. Ditto values, I think they are in SQLite or in text files. I don't remember, but yeah, it would be easy to leverage other tools, and that can be a companion to these tools.
And the also, because I think we've talked about it and played with it. There's a Win API. Actually, it's, if I remember right, it's 2 files. But there's an API for playing with the clipboard. Is it Win API? Is that what it is? I think. But you can, it has, someone's written, I think it's a class, but I can't quite remember if it's functions or classes. But you can programmatically, get values from the clipboard and set it. And
yeah, I've seen something like that. I took a look at that just to see how things were done. I didn't need that, or
no, I wouldn't think you would on this project, right?
But there are good tips on how to play with the keyboard.
I'm just saying, if you're interested in learning the clipboard,
for now.
Not you. I'm talking for everyone else. If they're interested in the clipboard, it's good to know it's out there.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, sorry it's lagging, so maybe I interrupted you. And one of the things that I may have to look at is when the clipboard contains no text. For now, it just returns a length of 0. If you try to get the length of the clipboard and it is only text, you will have a length of 0. If you use the clipboard constant in AUTOHOTKEY and do a string length of the clipboard, if it contains an image, the length will be 0.
Oh, well, there's a way to tell.
If you look at clipboard all, if you look at clipboard all, so if it is empty, or it is empty really, or it contains an image.
Well, but you can tell there's a setting in that clipboard all to say if it has text.
By looking at clipboard all, and
let me pull up the swapperoo thing I wrote the other day. Because I know it was one of the things that I added, and I'll share my screen here. Not that there's much in this thing, but share screen. So if the type here is it here? Type. If type is 1,
okay,
then it's text. If 1 is
okay, if it's 0, okay. I have not used that.
Yeah, no, me either.
So but so I can tell you that if the type is 2, so this is non-text, then if you use string length, the function to get the length of a string, to check the length of the clipboard, it will return 0. So it's another way to just, in my case, know that there's no text that I could put in my editor, but it's good to use this value too.
Yeah, I just thought, and maybe I'm wrong. This is where it probably gets down to who cares. But I would think this might be a little less heavy lifting from your memory usage and just CPU usage, because it's checking it before it even checks the length. It wouldn't have to go get the length, right? But again, with the stuff we do, it just doesn't matter, right?
And with the speed of our processors now, there are lots of things that we can become lazy. Right. We can become lazy with these.
Well, it's good to know. When I posted this, someone said, "Well, why don't you just do it on everything?" I'm like, "Well, I could, but." I'm like, if it's a big picture, if it's 5 megs, I don't want it trying to, pretend to search that thing for some text it'll never find. So it's just,
And I'm not strong on image processing, but my clipboard editor could also process images.
Right.
But I would need someone to work with me to build this image editor, which is really not my GDPI and these things. I'm easily lost.
Oh, me too.
All these things.
And this is why I went to Hellbent for adding that functionality to my tool, because the screen clipping tool, even though it uses the GDI library, I've never dove into it like he's doing. And I thought, you know what? I thought it'd be easier for him. It was harder than I was expecting.
No. It's not that it's hard. Is I want to do a nice job on it. Right. So I can make something in a couple hours that'll allow you to draw on it like the demos, I've shown you a couple of demos where I draw
Sure.
on things. The drawing on things isn't really a problem. Making a nice tool that's easy to use and that you want to use, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. I know Jean said he had a hard break, and
I'll have to leave. Yeah, I already have to
run to.
But the first thing I could do is just to display the image if it is an image in the clipboard instead of making it empty.
Right.
But maybe it would be frustrating to see the image and not being able to do anything on it. So, yeah. So yes, Joe, I have to leave. So thank you. Bye, Alben. Bye, Dale.
It was nice seeing you again.
Yeah, see you again.
Come on, John.
Bye.
Bye. Albert, was there anything else you're working on you want to share? We good?
No, not really, but I have a few, like one thing that I actually use a lot is a tool that it's one of my earliest tools. I'll show you it so that way you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's actually like one of the earliest tools I ever made, but I still use it to this day.
Cool.
And
awesome.
All it does is it allows me to create lists. So if I have to go and create like like even something like this here, but perhaps lists of colors or things like that, I use this to do that. So let's say if I want an array with strings in it, I can come in here and just do like blah 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 space blah 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 space blah 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 space, and then when I'm done, I can just put that in my clipboard and paste it in my script. What I can also do though is I can set it to use double space delimiter and auto clip. And now let's say if I want it to go and copy a bunch of things, I can just, as soon as I press Control C, it will start updating into here. Right, and then this allows, because I hate typing out quote, comma, quote, whatever I need to type out, quote, comma. I hate doing that, right? Likewise with array without strings and a pipe list. So if I want to make, if I'm making a just a list to go in a list box or something like that, I can just do this. And
well,
just paste it in. So I was going to ask, do you know if John's tool does that? Because I wouldn't mind having an upgraded thing.
No, not right now. But that would be some of the things that, it's you're monitoring your clipboard and then applying. That's where he was talking about, like being able to apply AUTOHOTKEY regular expression or something to your content, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, because I really wouldn't mind getting an upgraded thing to this. This, like I said, this is like one of the earliest tools I ever made, and it's just because I hate typing out quote, comma, quote. The other thing it turned out that it wasn't the same thing that he was talking about, but here's another way you can save to a script as long as it's not compiled. If it's compiled, you can't do it, but this is an ini section now in this. So if I run this, and if I was to like change, let's say, if I was to change this to A, so change that to A. As soon as I do this, it's going to update this. All right, so now I should just click on it and it updated it. Did you see?
Yeah.
All right, so even if this script isn't open, it'll write to this. So it'll save my settings from one end to the other. So all I'm doing is I'm just using this as if it's an ini file. So this is my section, and then these are the keys.
Right, but he's needing people. He needs to be able to have it flexible enough where people can write any sort of AUTOHOTKEY code and then execute it.
Yeah, his is probably just probably something that's it's the same principle, but a lot more complicated than this. So this, when I run this, it'll break this down and use these different values to populate different things. Likewise with the bitmap maker, how it works is when I add these things in here, it uses this, that every time it updates, I have a variable with the name of the function that it's supposed to go to, and then it uses the rest of the things to populate that function. So if it's a regex thing, right? So the keyword would be regex. So I'd say regex, and then the thing that follows it is the thing that I want to be that populates the function. So maybe I have two parameters. So I'll say regex, and then the first parameter, and then the second parameter, and it'll take that and it'll create like an object that has regex as the name, and it'll call up a regex function. So
Yeah,
in
but
my
you're
code,
defining the pattern.
Pardon?
You're defining the pattern, right?
Yes. So, well, no. Like in my code, there's a function called fill circle. So when I add this, when it loops through to draw everything, it goes through all the different function names, right? So I have an object that has this as a key. So it goes through all the keys of my object, and it says, okay, call up the fill circle thing, right? So, and then it'll have fill circle as that, and then it'll have an object, a sub object with all of these parameters. So in his case, he could have, like, instead of fill circle, it would be regex, and then the whatever values that he puts beside it. So let's say,
yeah, but then again, he doesn't know what they're going to put in here. It's going to be every possible command and AUTOHOTKEY.
yes, that's what I'm saying. Like for him, it wouldn't necessarily, he wouldn't be able to do it because
Right. Okay.
if it's really unlimited, but if it's there's only a certain range of things.
Yeah.
Then,
Okay. Yeah, but that's what he's trying to make it flexible enough where people can do whatever they want. Hey, put some AUTOHOTKEY code here, and then it'll apply that.
If all of AUTOHOTKEY was wrapped, you could do that, right? If all of AUTOHOTKEY was in functions, then you could do that because you can just call up the you could use the first, yeah. Anyways.
Yeah.
I guess you could do it with commands too, but it's not as easy.
Yeah, it's still very cool to be able to build something that can allow you to build some rules and turn them on and off and apply them differently. And I mean, we all have different stuff. I was doing one the other day that it reminded me. Actually, it was on the call with Jean where he was demonstrating the tool. And like when I was at TI, we had this content management system that couldn't handle certain HTML encoded, values. Well, you had to put in the HTML equivalents, like a bullet. You had to put in the HTML thing for it. And but there were certain ones that would know and certain ones that wouldn't know, and it was a nightmare trying to remember it. And anyway, I built a tool that would, I'd copy it, and then it would, if it was one of those things, it would go do it for me, and it just saved me so much time. But you could easily just be monitoring your clipboard for the same thing, right? And be like, okay, I'm in that tool. Look for the active, window I'm in. Oh, if that's active, run this tool and do it for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. That on clipboard change, that's a built-in function in AUTOHOTKEY?
It is. Yeah.
See, I just seen that. Like I didn't even know it existed until like I think the first time I seen it was like a week or two ago. I was reading.
Yeah, neither did I. And I forget how. I think we were on some sort of a call and someone mentioned it, and then I looked at it. And I'm like, oh, because I use the not clipboard. Well, wait for clipboard to have a value, and then in something I saw where they had that on clipboard change, and then I realized, oh, okay, it uses another. You can call a function based if that gets triggered, and so I started playing with it some, and I'm like, it's very handy because I will monitor my clipboard and look for changes and have it automatically get applied.
Yeah.
I see Red Shark Tooth 22 here is talking about doing some stuff, and they mentioned also, especially this last one, was concatenating the stuff to the clipboard, because I noticed also in that tool you were using that you had that you called it something different, but appending is what I think. Yeah, that is a super helpful. But yeah, AHK is amazing to save a ton of time. And that's what's awesome is it's so personal, right? We all use it in different ways. And that's why I like doing stuff like this, is you see what other people are working on and go, oh, I hadn't even thought about doing something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I get inspiration from all over. And it's always in unexpected places too, right?
You know, and it says something. I mean, I've been using it for over 10 years, and I still see stuff that like I've been doing for 10 years and never automated. And I'm like, why didn't I automate that? You know, it's not everything's obvious of like, you know, I do this so much. We get stuck in our little routines of doing things, and then suddenly realize, well, wait a minute, like my replacing of the www and the automator, I'm like, it's just really annoying to me if I don't want to have that in there. And I'm like, well, why am I manually doing this? Just monitor the clipboard for it.
One thing I would be able to talk, one thing I wouldn't mind talking about in this is, but I'm definitely not prepared in this time, but maybe another time, is using vectors to control your mouse. So if you like, I seen this come up multiple times, so it's got to be, you know, a fairly common thing, but for some reason recording your cursor seems to come up a lot. Like I've seen multiple threads about how, or like just the ability to move your cursor in a very smooth way. Have you ever done anything with moving your cursor, automating moving your cursor?
No.
Well, it's the AUTOHOTKEY. If you use the AUTOHOTKEY stuff, it's very clunky. But if you use a little bit of math and then use actual positions to move it along, you can actually accomplish some really nice looking effects. Make it move as slow as you want across any distance you want, and it just for recording or whatever. But vectors are probably the easiest way that I found to get results that are like amazing. Like,
and that's just to make it smoother. I'm not.
Yes, it's just to make it smoother. Yeah, and also like if you use the, let's say, mouse move between 2 points, what it does is it'll move along the X and the Y axis at the same rate. So if the Y distance is greater than the X distance, it'll move the full X distance, and then it'll start to move in a straight line. So it'll move on a diagonal and then start moving straight. So it looks kind of weird. Instead of just moving, right? Instead of just moving from A to B, it moves on a,
Huh. I've never.
Like, I think I have one example. I pulled it up, but I don't know what this example is. But I can show this. But I have a number of different methods. So there's different ways that you would approach the problem depending on what you're trying to do. So you can use like time-based and you were mentioning the quick code tester earlier. Okay, so let me see. So if I press number pad 1, this one is, where's it gonna go? I'm not sure what this one's gonna do. Let's see, maybe I wasted my time. There. Okay, so this one is moving X minus distance. So this one here is moving. I have it set up to move in the negative X axis, a total of 500 pixels in a time of 300 milliseconds. So I can say, so if I want to move from here over 500 pixels, and this, like I said, I have a bunch of other examples that are better than this one, but if I want to move that, but if I want to change how long it takes to move that, I can say, let's say 3.3 seconds. And it'll move that.
And people want the most, like you said, for recording. That's what it is, or
yeah, recording or things like that. That seems to be the common thing. So if they want to like have to record their cursor moving from this point to some other prearranged point, and they want to record, have a nice time lapse of it or something like that. I don't know what what they want.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this one isn't the best example I have. So I have another one where you can set on 2 points and then tell it how many intervals you want to move. Right. Another one more like this where you can say, okay, I want to move from here to here but you can determine how fast you want it to move. But like I said, this isn't the best example I've got. This is probably the worst example I've got. But it it just basically uses vectors. And the way, let's say we don't go into it eventually. The easiest way to explain it would be this top left corner is the origin point. So, but I'm going to put it here, and I think this. So let's say if I want it to move between these 2 points, this gives me a vector that kind of looks like this. So if I was to take this and cut it out and put it here, it would be a vector from here to here. Well, if I want to, if I use that as a way of moving, so I move from here to here in one frame, one instance. So immediately it would move there. But what I can do now is I can say, okay, take this vector and chop it up into as many times as I want to move. So I can say, move that distance in 1,000, move 1,000 times to cover that distance.
Intervals, so to speak.
Yeah. And the contrary to what you might think, where because everything on the screen is all pixel based, so it's just it's not a floating number. It's all integers. I've seen it quite often where the instinct is to like get rid of the decimal places, but you really want to use those decimal places, where it actually makes it look a lot smoother when it does have these kind of erratic. It's kind of weird, but using the decimal places definitely makes it look a lot smoother, in my opinion, than just moving one pixel at a time.
Here's the other thing that I'm just trying. Like I said, we're both kind of trying to understand how people are using this, right? In the sense of the smoothness of it, and let's say it's recordings. Wouldn't possibly just increasing the frames per second of your recording help it seem smoother? Is it that they're not recording it fast enough and the things are jumping?
I don't know. I think it's also like they want to. It could also just be they want to have full control on how fast it moves, right? So I don't know all their ins and outs, but definitely
that's okay.
Through testing, definitely vectors or some other way of calculating. So that way, definitely, so you can go in straight. So this is okay. This is what I was talking about with the other thing, where if you use the normal mouse move, if it was going to move to there,
right?
It would do
I understood.
Like,
it goes
something. What would it do? It would do like it would move on a 45-degree angle and then across. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a good visual there to help people. Like, to me, I was thinking, I wonder if games are looking for that kind of behavior and say, hey, that's not a person. That's a computer, because that's it's something that I could see a computer doing, and that's why they want to avoid it, is that it's getting flagged as a bot.
Yeah, another thing that I had done actually for that, like to make something that looks kind of like a human did it, was I would pick 2 points and use kind of like a gravitational attraction. So what I'd do is I would send the cursor going off in a random direction, and it would want to keep its momentum moving in whatever direction it was going, but then it would also have a gravitational attraction to this point. So I would send it off, and it would start to curve back towards this point, right? And then I would have rules where if it gets past, let's say, the halfway point, I would say, okay, now give it another random vector. Give it another random vector going off in another way.
Oh, okay.
Right? So that way it would kind of like give random pattern for the cursor. And I actually like had it do it where I would hold down, I'd go into MS Paint and have it move these patterns for it. And the ones that it did and the ones that I did trying to just draw it myself were actually pretty close. So
cool.
So it would just by determining on how much gravitational attraction this has, how much force it gets thrown off in a random direction, and then it just gradually corrects itself. And then once it gets to a certain distance, it just locks in and moves.
Mm-hmm. And I assume you also increased the gravitational pull the closer it got to the.
Yeah. There's all kinds of rules that you can add to it. Yeah.
Neat.
What I think what I did was, once it got, so if this was my point, once it got to within here, it would stop its velocity, all of its velocity, and so that way only gravity takes hold.
Okay. All right.
So before it might have a velocity also in this direction, and I'd have to add this velocity towards it and this velocity together to get a new vector, right? And then it would just gradually curve over time. But once it would get within this certain range, I would stop all of its momentum, and then it would just fall into it like it's if it was falling into a black hole. Yeah, vectors for moving the mouse, definitely, or just any kind of, I guess, trigonometry. But I find using vectors, using the class I have is a lot easier. It's a lot easier to visualize it and think about it.
Awesome. Well, cool, man. Thank you.
Do you have anything else you can share?
No, well, other than which of the URLs over my head if you're looking at me, but I did launch a new AUTOHOTKEY Udemy course. It's free, and it's really for really complete noobs. So if you've never programmed AUTOHOTKEY, these are the stuff you want to know before you start programming. So it's not for, I don't think, anybody on this call or watching it, but just, if you know someone that's starting to get interested in it, it's a good, walkthrough of things that you'd want to know ahead of time. So you might want to check it out. But my dad's here for Thanksgiving, so I'm gonna
Nice.
But thanks for joining, Hellbent. It's good talking to you. And interesting. Interesting. And this is the thing is, like, I don't think I'll be using that one, but it's still an interesting concept to understand of that issue, like with AUTOHOTKEY of movement, and that it's not as smooth as some would want. And by simply doing basically math to me and getting coordinates and using those coordinates, you can not fake it, but make it a much smoother system.
Yeah, it's definitely, what I would say is, even if you don't use the vectors, ideally you want to set the positions yourself rather than using the default mouse move for a distance. If you're trying to record, if you want smooth movements.
Yeah. Someone was mentioning I should use newbie instead of noobs. As far as I'm concerned, the two are interchangeable, but
I think the connotation's a little bit of a difference.
Okay. I either way, but thank you all. And have an awesome week. And
yeah, happy Thanksgiving to you.
Yeah, thanks, man. I know you're in. I was teasing Jean and asking him, and Jackie too, if they enjoyed Thanksgiving. It's funny because Jackie was saying how he's Halloween starting to get kind of bigger over there, and I'm like, I know Thanksgiving is tied to us for pilgrims, but it's to me it's my favorite holiday. It's to being thankful for what I'm thankful for and going through that, and then family and stuff and friends, and it's much more to me something I enjoy celebrating over Christmas is just too presenty to me, and Halloween is too candy for me. But yeah, anyway, thanks again. Good talking to you. Thanks, everyone.